evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Johanna Chan. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Carrie Lam warns of price increases as tighter quarantine requirements hit cargo flights. A Causeway Bay hotpot restaurant is investigated following a fresh COVID outbreak. And the new legislature opens with 20 members missing after a COVID scare. Chief Executive Carrie Lam has warned of price hikes for imported goods as the government tightens quarantine rules for cargo aircrew. This came as lawmakers grilled her over Cathay Pacific, which has been blamed for sparking the city's latest clusters. Chloe Feng reports.
Cathay Pacific became a hot topic in today's question and answer session in the Legislative Council. The chief executive was grilled over Hong Kong's flagship airline after its staff were accused of triggering the city's latest COVID outbreaks. Some questioned whether special arrangements for cargo crew should continue. The chief executive assured that those who broke the rules will be punished, but defended the government's decision not to scrap the exemptions.
Do we really want to destroy this industry? And we're not just destroying airliners. We're destroying the whole society when we do that. The biggest category is food. You know, we have many Japanese restaurants without air cargo. We can't bring in fresh seafood. And next on the list is electronic goods and then also pharmaceuticals.
Before the outbreak, airline cargo staff were excluded from the city's tough 21-day hotel quarantine requirement for incoming passengers. Instead, they were allowed to do home isolation for 3 days. That was until 4 Cathay Pacific employees broke this rule last month and started several clusters around the city. This caused the government to up the requirement to 7 days of hotel quarantine and warned of price hikes in imported goods.
You will soon see the effect of such tightened measures because we have already seen a substantial drop in cargo capacity.
But some lawmakers argue that a lack of imports is a good price to pay to avoid further outbreaks.
He's saying that if we stand firm, we won't have fresh sashimi or sushi to fly in from Japan. Are we going to have big health problems? I don't think so.
Meanwhile, Cathay Pacific chairman Patrick Haley defended his staff. Some are said to be flight attendants who deliberately returned in cargo planes to enjoy home isolation.
First, the decision to roster staff on cargo-only passenger aircraft to return to Hong Kong was the company's decision, and the company takes full responsibility for that decision.
Haley promised to cooperate in the government's investigation, which could lead to legal action against Cathay. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
A search is continuing for the source of infection of a Penny's Bay security guard who has been logged as an untraceable case. Another hotpot restaurant, meanwhile, is at the center of a new scare after a person who contracted COVID had eaten there. There are fears that a hotpot restaurant at Hysan Place in Causeway Bay may be the source of another COVID outbreak. A 20-year-old University of Hong Kong student was found to be preliminary positive after eating at Nabe Urawa last Tuesday evening. On investigation, officials found an infected woman who is linked to the dance cluster was present at the same time, a few tables away.
We are concerned because we do not know the exact, we do not actually understand the routes of transmission in these settings because the ventilation system and also the airflow may vary from restaurant to restaurant.
Meanwhile, authorities are still following up on an untraceable case, a security guard at Penny's Bay. She always wore full protective gear when moving luggage for those quarantined and sometimes spoke to them through a window.
The risk for her to transmit the illness to other residents of the quarantine center is very low. But of course, she has some colleagues who stay with her during meals in a container and work with her. So those colleagues are considered at higher risk and will be quarantined.
There were 22 new COVID cases, 5 of them local transmissions that were confirmed today. They include the wife and son of an infected Tuen Mun dispensary owner. Authorities are considering taking sewage samples from high-risk areas, including Tuen Mun. Long queues have appeared outside several testing stations in Tuen Mun amid fears of an invisible transmission chain in the district. 10 test centers are operating for at least 12 hours a day to cope with the demand. The owner of a Tuen Mun pharmacy and 3 members of his family were out and about for days before they tested positive for COVID. 9 premises in the district have been slapped with compulsory testing notices. A residential building in Northpoint has been partially evacuated following the city's second vertical transmission case in 4 days. Microbiologist Yoon Kwok-yong inspected Phase 3 of Maple Garden today after 2 residents tested preliminary positive. On Monday, another person living on a lower level was confirmed with the virus. All 14 households of Units B were quarantined. Last Sunday, 19 households of a Tai Po building had to go into isolation for 2 weeks because of the same type of transmission. After his inspection, Yoon said people should consider wearing 2 face masks for stronger protection.
I was being asked on the opinion of wearing N95 as in the United States or in Canada. But personally, I think that wearing N95 every day by everyone in Hong Kong is not a practical thing. It's expensive. It's not that available. So I think if you really want to be safer with the Omicron outbreak in Hong Kong, then you would consider wearing 2 surgical masks.
A clinic in Tin Shui Wai has been warned by the Department of Health for using expired COVID vaccines. Last week, the Newtown Medical Center administered 24 BioNTech doses, which had expired 2 days earlier, and 12 shots which were a few hours old. 2 people claimed that they had stomach aches after the jabs. The manufacturer, Pfizer, said there's no evidence to show that expired vaccines can cause adverse effects. The chief executive has appealed to lawmakers to work rationally under the new electoral system. She reinforced her goals at the first session of the legislature. Under the electoral overhaul that ensures patriots will rule Hong Kong, the Legislative Council was expanded to 90 members. But only 70 lawmakers greeted Chief Executive Carrie Lam when she walked in for the inaugural session of the 7th legislature. After a COVID scare following a now notorious birthday bash, 4 legislators were quarantined in Penny's Bay and 16 more were in self-isolation. In her address, Lam urged the members to work together under the new system. She hoped to have 2 more government boroughs vetted by June, taking the number to 15. There will be a new one for culture, sports and tourism, while transport and housing will have separate boroughs.
The Housing Bureau, upon reorganization, will take full charge of the housing policy, which tops the agenda, especially in expediting public housing production for people to move in as early as possible. The Food and Health Bureau, to be renamed Medical and Health Bureau, will address issues such as the doctor shortage and medical technology. Lam recommended that the Chief Secretary oversees 9 boroughs and the Financial Secretary 6. The next time government may consider the creation of the post of Deputy Secretaries of Departments to take forward and coordinate large-scale regional developments. These include the Northern Metropolis, which the government plans to convert into an information technology hub and build 186,000 homes. 3 public hospitals and a railway line to Shenzhen will be included. Lam noted that 40 bills were pending, including those on national security and child abuse. In her first question and answer session of the new legislature, the chief executive had good news and bad news for workers. The much criticized offsetting mechanism is definitely on its way out, but there will be no direct assistance for workers affected by COVID curbs. Isaac Lee reports.
Carrie Lam had some good news for Hong Kong workers, who have long complained that their pensions in the Mandatory Provident Fund, the MPF, were eroded by the so-called offsetting mechanism.
We are hoping that by the end of the current government term, that is June the 30th, we will pass this iconic piece of legislation on abolishing the MPF offsetting arrangement. This bill is likely to be the first bill tabled in the 7th LegCo, and this shows that the current term government pays a lot of attention to the interests of the grassroots.
This means employers will not be able to use their contribution to a worker's MPF to offset long service or severance payments. But Lam said the arrangement may not take effect until 2025. Lawmakers were also eager for workers to get direct assistance from the government to tide them over the pandemic. The government has pledged $4 billion for the 5th round of the Anti-Epidemic Fund, or AEF, and said the arrangements will largely be the same as before.
In the previous rounds of AEF, many frontline workers didn't get any subsidy at all from their employees. So why don't you offer subsidy instead to employees? We explained many times why we adopted the approach, and in fact, the fund has been effective. And then when the economy improved, unemployment rate has dropped from 4.2% in early 2021 to 4.1% now.
The hot-hit tourism industry complained that it's taking too long for quarantine-free cross-border travel to resume. Lam said Hong Kong and the mainland have been holding regular discussions, adding that reopening the border will not be feasible until Hong Kong has no more local COVID infections. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
Lawmakers said it was unfortunate that 20 colleagues were unable to attend the opening session because of the birthday bash fiasco.
It's something that happened. Nobody wanted it, but it happened. Okay, it's regrettable, but at the same time, it also reflects the sense of responsibility of the LegCo members who did not turn up, who did not attend today, because they did not want to jeopardize the operation of LegCo from day one.
Other lawmakers, meanwhile, led by LegCo President Andrew Leung, received their booster shots today. And coming up after the break, comments by Fed Chairman Jerome Powell spurred the Hang Seng Index to its biggest percentage gain in 3 months.